Hello, everyone. Welcome to Issues of Faith. Thank you for being with us. We're talking with contemporary Christian artist Jennifer Knapp, singer-songwriter. You've written a memoir. Thank you for being with us.
My pleasure.
Your memoir is just out, Facing the Music. You've won 4 Dove Awards, 2 Grammy nominations. So you've done all this stuff, but then at the height of your career, you walked away.
I did.
Why did you do that?
You know, that's still something I'm processing. I think even after writing a book about it a little bit, it's one of those things to really put a finger on. But one of the major things at the time was, part of it was my youth, exhaustion. And I think even in being involved in the Christian music, part of that is kind of somewhat growing up inside of the religious community and having my faith evolve inside of that time, that trying to figure out how to kind of navigate that and express that in an environment where I thought Christianity was one thing, and mine was perhaps a little bit different than everything that was surrounding me or that I thought was around me, was something I really felt like I needed to, at least at the time, I thought I needed to either divorce myself of or get out of. But what it ended up being is just needing some time to figure out how to find my own voice inside of that, and the confidence with my own voice and being able to express my faith.
So you walked away in 2003.
That sounds about right.
That sounds about right.
2002 was the last time I did a Christian gig, yeah.
All that success, and you walk away. Then years later, you came out as a lesbian.
Yes.
So how was that received? I think it was 2010. We're talking several years later.
Yeah.
You made that announcement.
Yeah.
How was that received?
Well, I think you could pretty much write the script on how that happened. I mean, it was definitely something that was stressful to be able to come out, and knowing that that was a really big decision, particularly because of the experience that I had in being recognizable inside of the faith community, where LGBT issues is definitely a really big deal and often a qualifying factor of whether or not one's faith is legitimate or not. And to be able to have to say, listen, this is who I am, was something that really took me a moment to really make sure that I wanted to be able to have to kind of commit to. And because with it comes the negative opinion, the dissent that I knew that I was going to hear, and kind of the arguments that were familiar with Christianity, kind of saying that homosexuality and a Christian faith aren't compatible. Yet I'd had this experience that wasn't exactly equaling up to that. So the coming out process, even though I anticipated the negative, actually turned out to be incredibly positive, because I thought in coming out that I would immediately kind of have all the excuses I'd ever want to walk away from my faith. And instead it actually, with all the positive response that I got, and with all the encouragement from both people who were LGBT and just straight alike, were very encouraging of me in my process. And I think that was the beginning for me, and coming out was a lot of healing with my faith community they thought was going to immediately reject me.
And when you came out, you said you don't want to be the poster child for this movement. And so when you came out, I guess you weren't. I mean, now it is part of this book. Have your opinions there evolved? You know,
I don't know if they've evolved, but I've certainly learned a lot. I mean, when I came out in 2010, I had no idea what the road in front of me was going to look like. I was just another gay kid coming out in church. And I didn't really know or yet have the experience of what it was going to be like to have to navigate all of that opinion that comes to your doorstep the second that you come out. One of the things I talk about is I walk into a room, and you can almost set your watch by how long it takes somebody to want to talk about LGBT issues of faith, just simply because somebody knows this random thing about me. But with that, you know, the advocacy side of it, I didn't really know how to see my way through it. It was such a big conversation, and you know, so riveting and interesting on one hand, but I hadn't lived in the world that way. And at 4 years on, what I would tell you is that in my experience of coming out and sharing this little tidbit of information about myself, I'll go out and play a show, and people come up to me and tell me their own stories, experiences they've had inside a faith community that have made it difficult for them to find their way, to hold on to their faith and find empowerment for themselves, or explaining, you know, what little foible they might have here that sometimes makes them both unique and makes them feel alienated from the perfect Christian world they imagine themselves to need to be living in. What coming out has then taught me is that there's there's this ability to be able to contribute my own story to the community around me. And in part, that's an LGBT story, but what that's made me even more of an advocate of is kind of circled me back to where I started in the Christian music industry, which is just being vulnerable, talking about this process that we're experiencing in life and being able to share that and create community because of it.
I would think there'd be a lot of sense of responsibility sometimes that you don't want to take on.
Yeah.
Do you feel that? I mean, here you are, you're a prominent person, you were very successful in this world, and now you're over here in this world. Did you feel this is a lot of responsibility and I don't want to take it on?
I've always felt that way. I've always felt like I love my job, and as a musician, I really love what I do, and I get to perform and be the diva. But it is a lot of responsibility. I take it very seriously in that, we find sources of inspiration from the people that we watch, and I'm the same way. I go and read authors and listen to music that inspires me to kind of get up every day and do something cool with my life. So I understand that, but I've always somewhat found myself in this reluctant position, like in every time I sit down and play guitar and I write a new song, the next step of that is sharing that with someone else, and I go, oh man, if I do that, I'll end up on stage and in the bright lights. And that was one of the reasons why my hiatus was so long, that I was just so afraid to tap into music, because one of the things for music was that it drew me out into the social space. And so I'd write a song, and of course my friends would want to hear it. Well, if I played that song in public, people then would go, well, what about your faith? Or what about your sexual orientation? And every time that we share something about ourselves in that story, in that space, always leads us on to the next thing. And for me, that's been my life lesson in going back, and what I've discovered even in writing the book, was that it's these little nuggets that are unique to me that keep drawing me out into the space of not just finding my own path, but seeing how I can affect the world, and hopefully positively, around me.
And so when I ask about why you left, the height of your career, 4 Dove Awards, 2 Grammy nominations, that's a lot. And then you walk away. Was it because this issue that no one knew about at the time, was that part of it? Were you struggling with it, or was it, you didn't mention it initially, was it all the other stuff?
No, it really wasn't. I think at best my sexual orientation was at a space of question mark at that point, and not knowing whether or not I was in a safe environment, I think, was the thing that I really wanted to find out the answer to that question. And I knew that I was going to need a safe space to do that, and not live that out in a public space. And I just needed to do that for myself. And there was no amount of money or success or anything that I could do in job and satisfying myself in that sense of fulfillment that was anything that I wanted to find gratification in that space was only delaying the inevitable. I needed to take care of the person I am every day, the person I have to go to sleep with, the person I have to wake up with, the person that I have to go home and be a daughter to with my mom and my family. So I had to sort those things out, and I think that to me was why I realized I think at the time I was like 27 years old. I had an idea that, okay, I was successful, but that didn't make me an adult. That didn't necessarily make me a whole and well-rounded person. And in some ways, my faith was somewhat of that question. Is all I am this facade of this Christian experience that I'm having? I needed to find out who I was at the bottom of that. So, I think the sexuality kind of perhaps played into it a little bit, but only in the sense, I would tell you that I was like, what is that? I don't know what that is. I need to go to a quiet place and sort that out. But the hard road in getting back was knowing things about myself, being in a spotlight, and making the decision to follow in the next step and do that, even though there might be risks that went along with it.
So did you feel like it was a facade? I mean, again, you're young, and so we all have. Did you feel like you needed a safe space, you said, and where you were, you just needed to get away, and that it wasn't a safe space, and that maybe you weren't really who you were for whatever reason?
I did worry about that, actually. I worried that maybe I was participating in expressing my faith in with Christian music. I worried that was a facade, and that perhaps I was selling something that I didn't really believe in. And at the time, I didn't really know the answer to that question. It took a lot of years to circle around from going, wow, I've written some songs that I really truly mean. I've I've had experience that I've genuinely shared with people about my faith and in the faith environment that have meant a lot to me. But sometimes along the way we get hurt. We see things that are maybe a little bit incongruous or rub us the wrong way. And I think at the time, you know, I would have described to you that I was in a very evangelical environment and people saw me as a very evangelical Christian role. However, theologically, I would have told, I didn't realize it at the time, but as I was growing up and attaching to my own faith, I didn't identify as evangelical anymore. There were some ideas that I were a little left of center from what I'd been taught. And so I didn't know if I'd been lying to kind of keep up and be like everyone else, or if that didn't mean anything to me at all. And I think that's sometimes a natural response we have. When we're not like other people around us, we somewhat want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. If I don't look like you and you want me to be like you, then something's wrong with you, or something's wrong with me. Instead of understanding the value of the role that I get to play and the value of the role that you get to play and how together we can make a beautiful community and be able to share those and have a really rich conversation. That took a lot of practice and a lot of years to realize that. I'm surprised. I mean, I really wanted to throw the baby out with the bathwater for sure.
And how hard was it to walk away? I guess who was it hardest to tell? Who was most shocked? Because again, you're very successful. And then, and what did you do? Was it really cold turkey? I mean, did you really just kind of, you were at this big place, and then, you know, for 7 years, in 2003, you just quit, walk away. Who was the hardest to tell, and what were you doing in that time?
Yeah, who was the hardest person to tell?
Or was somebody just overtly shocked and said, no, you can't do this? Did you get a lot of no, you can't do this?
I got a lot of no, I can't do that. But that took about a year. I mean, I had a couple of years where I was going, I think I need to have a pretty radical shift in my life. And I would have been happy with a good long vacation rather than completely walking away from it. But I spent a couple of years hearing, no, you can't do that. You're being successful. This is great. Why would you want to do that? You're killing your career. Until finally no one helped and supported in that space enough to go, okay, maybe we can help you with that. So I did quit cold turkey. I had the last date in September 2002. I remember putting the latches down on my guitar case, and that was it. And for 5 years, I didn't open up my guitar cases. I didn't sing a word.
Wow.
I just didn't know how to handle it, because every time I went back and played, I replayed that reel. Am I a facade? Am I a fake? What does this mean? And 1,000 other different questions that were just so overwhelming. So, you know, that part of saying no was really hard, but it was, in essence, cold turkey. I mean, I just got to a point where I literally, for me, it was a survival decision. I'd either continue to do something that I knew was kind of breaking my spirit, or I had to really take the risk and say, I've got to do something else. And that's kind of a risk we talk about in the LGBT community a lot. And the challenges that some people have in coming out is that you get to that point where you know that something's going to catastrophically break, and you're willing to take the risk to tell something true and honest about yourself, no matter what the cost.
We have to take a break. Then I want to come back and talk about how you got to that position in the first place. Talk about your early life, that kind of thing. So we'll take a break. Be back right after this.